I pulled into the gravel lot of the Pinecrest Estates Community Center about 20 minutes before they were supposed to start the so-called legacy governance meeting. The sky hung heavy and gray, the kind of overcast that seeps into your bones no matter how nice your jacket is. I'd driven over from my house on Maple Lane without much of a real invitation, just a bland email CC'd to me 2 days earlier, tucked between spam about recycling bins and a reminder that my flagpole was 0.5 inches too tall according to Section 4.2 of the Covenants. No, dear Alyssa, no details, just attached and a cold subject line. As I stepped out of my car and smoothed the hem of my navy blouse, I scanned the scene. White tents dotted the back lawn like they were hosting a country club funeral. Catered coffee stations, little golden name cards on every chair. It all looked so civilized, so perfectly suburban. You know, the kind of place where everyone smiles while they measure your grass with a ruler. A young guy with a headset and clipboard scurried over as I approached the patio. "You here with the catering crew?" he asked, eyes already darting away. I blinked slowly. "No, I'm Alyssa Grant, Henry Grant's granddaughter." He fumbled with the tablet, cheeks flushing. "Oh, right. Of course. Sorry. MS. Grant. Just head around back. They're about to begin." MS. Grant. It sounded strange coming from him, like I was some outsider instead of the kid who used to ride her bike through these very streets when my grandpa was still laying the foundations for every house in this neighborhood. Inside the main tent, almost every seat was taken. A big printed sign that said "Board Families" was taped to the front row. Every single chair had a fancy name card in swirling script. Karen Langley sat front and center between Loretta, my mother's oldest friend in the neighborhood, and that smug board member who always acted like he owned the pond. My name wasn't on any of them. Loretta didn't even look up as I hovered there. She just gave that two-finger wave toward the very back row, like I was the help asking if a seat was free. No smile, no hello. Just that gesture you give when you want someone to disappear quietly. I sat down next to a humming space heater in the corner, trying to ignore the way my stomach twisted. It felt like I'd crashed somebody else's family reunion. Then Karen's voice cut through the murmurs, loud enough for the rows around her to hear, but dripping with that fake honey she perfected over years of board meetings. "Oh, look who decided to take a break from her little side projects. How nice of you to join us. Alyssa." Her laugh was sharp, rehearsed. Before I could even open my mouth, Loretta leaned over with her gentle mom smile. "Maybe it's time for a little break from all this neighborhood stuff, too. Dear, might do you some good." The words landed soft, but they cut deep. She said it like she was recommending a spa day, not politely telling me to get lost. Her tone was so sweet, so reasonable that if I pushed back, I'd look like the crazy one. The dramatic neighbor. The one who doesn't understand how things work here. I forced a polite smile and nodded instead. Every instinct screamed to say something, but I knew better. In Pinecrest Estates, the HOA didn't scream. They smiled and fined you into submission. The board attorney finally stood up and started the reading of the updated covenants and governance structure, Grandpa's legacy documents they'd been reviewing since he passed. Names rolled off his tongue with all the pomp of royal decrees. Karen Langley received expanded management rights. The smug VP got the community lake access privileges. Ray got residual rights over the common area royalties from events. When he got to me, there was an awkward pause. And to Allie Grant, he stumbled, designated as community volunteer liaison, with distributions pending compliance review. Allie, only Grandpa ever called me that when I was little. Here, in this tent full of power suits and neighborhood royalty, it sounded like a dismissal, a polite way of saying afterthought. The packet in my lap spelled it out clearly. Allie Grant volunteer distribution pending final approval. As if I was some outsider that let help with bake sales. I scanned the crowd. No one flinched. Not Karen, who had signed off on the drafts. Not Loretta. They just sat there, clapping politely as the attorney moved on. That's when it sank in. They hadn't forgotten me. They had deliberately erased me. 3 months earlier, I'd emailed Karen a full proposal for solar panels on the community clubhouse roof. I'd spent weeks crunching numbers, getting quotes, even attaching renderings that showed exactly how the savings would lower everyone's dues. Her reply? Thanks for the suggestion. Dear, we'll loop you in. Weeks turned into months. Nothing. At the last board meeting, she stood up beaming, unveiling the Langley Green Future Initiative with my exact renderings. My exact numbers. Just her name slapped on top. The board clapped like she'd invented sunshine. I sat in the back of that tent remembering every petty fine that had piled up since Grandpa died. My bird feeder? Wrong shade of red, $1.50. My porch light, left on past 10 p.m. During a power outage? $75. My American flag flying on a random Tuesday? Another $75 because it wasn't an approved holiday. Karen always signed those notices herself. Her loopy signature like a personal kiss-off. The slideshow started next, Grandpa's life and photos. Every milestone, every groundbreaking, every ribbon cutting. Karen in front of the new pool. Ray with the First Street sign. Not one picture of me. Not the time I helped plant the community orchard. Not the playground I fundraised for. Just edited out. I slipped outside after the meeting. The cold air sharper than any fine. Karen's heels clicked behind me. Alyssa, sweetie, we should chat. You seemed a little intense lately. Her smile never reached her eyes. We all grieve in our own way. Maybe some space would help the whole community. I didn't answer. I just walked to my car, keys cold in my palm. They thought they could smile me out of existence. They had no idea the envelope Grandpa had given me 2 years ago was still sitting in my desk drawer. Sealed. Waiting. Back home that night, the house felt too quiet. I didn't turn on the lights right away. Just the street lamp glow through the blinds was enough to find the bottom drawer. The envelope was thick, labeled in Grandpa's steady handwriting. Pinecrest backup. Open only if they forget who built this place. I didn't open it yet. Instead, I pulled out the old donation tracking spreadsheet I'd kept for the community fund years ago. Every receipt. Every timestamp, every donor note in the margins. Karen had streamlined. It's 6 months before Grandpa passed. When I asked for access last quarter, she'd said, "It's all merged now. Dear, no need to worry your pretty head." That folder never reappeared. 3 months later, she unveiled the Langley Community Pavilion with the exact same budget breakdown I created. My fonts, my phrasing, even the donor thank you language. Standing ovation. She walked past me afterward and patted my shoulder. Thanks for planting the seed. Allie, I remembered another afternoon. Early fall. Grandpa and me on his back porch. He'd asked me to stay after the family barbecue. Got an idea? He'd said, eyes twinkling the way only people who know they're near the end can twinkle. I pitched digitizing the entire community history, online donor dashboard, clean reporting, tying it to the neighborhood website. He loved it. I spent 2 weeks building mock-ups. Timeline, budget. 1 month later, Karen presented the exact same plan at the annual meeting, renamed Voss Heritage Hub, standing ovation again. She'd replaced my name with hers like swapping a coffee order. They weren't borrowing. They were burying. I finally cracked the envelope the next morning. Inside, a notarized document signed by Henry Grant himself, dated 24 months ago. 43% voting shares and discretionary financial authority transferred to me. A post-it in his handwriting. This isn't a gift. It's a safeguard. Don't let them redefine legacy. It didn't feel like surprise. It felt like confirmation. He'd seen the erosion coming. The way they could smile you out of your own story. Then the other letter arrived, buried under junk mail. A notice from a bank I'd never heard of. $180,000 business loan filed under my social security number. Signature looked close enough to mine. I'd never taken a loan. But Karen's team had access to old onboarding files. They'd lifted my signature, used my name as collateral for a community vehicle lease, and a branding revamp. The revamp? Karen's new sleek logo that quietly dropped Grandpa's name from everything public. Future first. Family second. Soulless. Bill on my identity. I scanned the stock certificate, Grandpa's note, the loan documents. Attached them all to a draft email to my attorney. Subject, contingency activation. Pre-review only. I saved it to drafts. Not yet. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because I was tired, because I was ready. The first ripple hit before 9 a.m. Loretta called 3 times. I let it go to voicemail. At 9:27 a.m., former board member texted, "Did you really freeze the trust?" I replied with a single period. At 10:12, Karen's name lit up my screen. I watched it ring. Didn't answer. She left a voicemail I didn't listen to. I already knew the tone, polite panic. I poured coffee slow and steady and opened my banking app just to confirm the hold on all HOA accounts had taken effect. It had. Later that morning, I imagined Karen at the fancy bistro she loved, trying to pay for her celebratory salmon lunch with a community card. Swipe failing. Her smile faltering. The server apologizing loudly enough for the next table to hear. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This one's not going through." Karen reaching for her purse. Hands suddenly less steady. The silence on the drive back thicker than the Chardonnay. I knew my inbox flooded with auto forwards from a bank. Pending withdrawals suspended. Payroll frozen. Expense reports stuck. Vendor payments bounced. Karen's name struck from the authorized signature roster. A quiet digital erasure. They'd spent years deleting me from the narrative. They forgot I still had the pen. The second account freeze hit at 10 p.m. while I was brushing my teeth. Karen's face appeared on the video preview. I let it ring until the last vibration. It rang again. I answered. "We need to talk," she said, skipping pleasantries. Her hair was slightly undone, voice tighter than usual. "You froze the accounts. That's not how neighbors operate." I stared at the camera. "Exactly. That's why I did it." She flinched a fraction, then leaned closer. "You're not thinking long-term. Alyssa, you've made this personal." "No," I said. "Calm as stone. You did when you turned my name into a financial loophole." She started another lecture masked as concern, but I ended the call mid-sentence. Not to avoid conflict, to close the curtain. 20 minutes later, an anonymous email hit my inbox. No subject, just 2 words. "Watch this." Attached was security camera footage from the community center conference room. Timestamped 3 months ago. Karen stood near the whiteboard with her assistant. Her voice crystal clear. "Just delete her from the file. She won't notice." Short, brutal, casual sabotage delivered with the efficiency of someone who'd done it before. I saved it, attached it to an email to my lawyer. Proof of premeditated exclusion. Then I went to bed and slept like I hadn't in months. The next morning, a compliance officer texted me off the record. "They're trying to frame the mismanagement on system errors. Act fast." I replied, "Let them scream. I'm giving them a stage." Within 24 hours, the hallway whispers started. Staff exchanged glances. Avoided eye contact in elevators. You don't have to say someone's guilty. Just let them start explaining things unprompted. I drafted a formal message to the top-tier partners. Not personal. No threats. Just precision. Subject, internal realignment notification. Body, due to recent governance review. Temporary access limitations implemented. Transparency will be restored. No names. No drama. Everyone knew. Karen posted on the community page blaming technical interruptions. The comments were brutal. One neighbor wrote, "I trust a vending machine more than this leadership." Another, "Funny how the HOA is always reviewing but never explaining." She tried to bury me in silence. Now her silence was being dissected in public. The calendar invite arrived at 7:08 a.m. The next morning. Subject: Emergency Board Session. I was CC'd, not addressed. The kind of inclusion that says show up but stay quiet. Meeting set for 1 p.m. At the community hall. I arrived early. Not because I needed time to prepare. Because I wanted them to see I wasn't hiding. The boardroom was full by the time I walked in. Karen sat at the head, flanked by Loretta and 2 longtime members. The HOA attorney stood awkwardly near the side. Karen started before I even sat. Her actions have jeopardized liquidity, impacted payroll, and undermined investor trust. Loretta nodded faintly, lips pressed in concern. I took the open seat at the end, quietly pulling a binder from my bag. Karen kept talking. We've always managed internal affairs as a team, but unilateral decisions create serious governance risks. I flipped open the binder slowly. Since we're all being transparent now, I said, voice low but crisp. The room hushed. Karen stopped mid-sentence. I placed the first document on the table. Grandpa's notarized stock transfer, giving me 43% controlling interest. The signatures spoke for themselves. Next, the flash drive. There's a video file on there, I said, passing it to the attorney. He inserted it. The screen flickered. Karen's voice filled the room. Just delete her from the file. She won't notice. Silence. Even Loretta looked down. I let the footage end before placing the third document. Form granting me co-signatory authority on all Pinecrest accounts. Activated under Grandpa's original trust. Karen started to speak. This time the attorney cut her off. I think we've heard enough for now. I opened my phone and tapped play on a voice memo. Grandpa's voice. Raspy but clear. Don't let them redefine legacy. Legacy is who remembers your name when you're not in the room. No one moved. No one breathed. I looked around once, then spoke. As of today, I've initiated a freeze on all discretionary allocations and requested a third-party audit of the community fund. Further misuse of personal identity or unauthorized leverage will be handled via civil recourse. Mr. Halbert simply nodded and made a note. I turned to Loretta. She looked like she wanted to say something, but didn't. Instead, her eyes filled, and she pressed a napkin to her mouth. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said, standing. I'm doing it because someone had to. I handed a copy of my statement to the attorney and tucked the binder back into my bag. As I walked out, I paused at the door. You pushed me out of your rooms. Now I own the doors. And the first door I closed was yours. 2 days later, the front doors of the community center stayed locked past opening hours. An email had gone out at dawn. Temporary closure. Internal systems under audit. I had written the draft myself. By noon, my inbox had 5 auto forwards from the bank. Payroll frozen. Expense reports stuck. Vendor payments bounced. Karen's name struck from every authorized list. A quiet digital erasure. No one in the neighborhood called. Not Loretta until 3:17 p.m. When a single text came through. This is too much. We didn't raise you to be cold. I stared at it, reread it twice, and deleted it without replying. It wasn't coldness. It was clarity. They had no idea how long it had taken me to stop apologizing for not letting them destroy me with grace. The next hit came the following morning. A major landscaping firm was about to finalize a $2.8 million contract Karen had been counting on for her pet project. I didn't stop it with rage. I stopped it with a 1-paragraph email to their compliance team summarizing the lack of transparent oversight and the pending audit. The deal collapsed within 18 hours. The internal thread leaked. Of course. I saw the screenshot. Alyssa Grant blackballed the deal. No. I protected the integrity. They just never learned the meaning of that word. Later that night, I sat alone in my kitchen, half-eaten salad in front of me, phone face down on the counter. The silence was complete. A message came in from someone I hadn't heard from in years, Marshall Green, who used to work with Grandpa. I always knew you were the only one who didn't want anything but order. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just whispered to the empty room. Why did it take a collapse for them to say something real? 3 weeks later, the first formal audit report landed in every key inbox. Over $480,000 funneled through the Community Development Fund with no documentation. The fund had been under Karen's purview for 16 months. It wasn't questionable. It was indictable. By noon, I'd sent an internal memo locking all board members out of the fund systems. The name Pinecrest Community Foundation was retired. I refiled it under a new independent board, zero family representation. The blow hit exactly where it was meant to. Loretta didn't call. Karen didn't write. But I knew they saw it. My silence had always traveled faster than their words. That evening, I mailed letters to every top investor and partner. Effective immediately, all ongoing projects would continue under new governance. Transparency, ethics, nonpartisan oversight required. At the bottom, just beneath my name, I added Grandpa's quote scribbled on an old napkin. Trust doesn't come from the name on a check. It comes from who signs it when no one's watching. Some investors pushed back at first. Old school loyalty dies slow. But when they saw the audit logs and legal validation, their tone shifted. A few offered polite apologies. Most offered money. I declined both. At 8:22 p.m., Loretta called. Her voice wasn't angry this time. It was smaller, like wind through dried leaves. It's all unraveling, she whispered. You didn't have to do this. I didn't yell. I didn't sigh. You're right, I said softly. I didn't have to, but I was the only one who could. Long pause. Then a quiet click. She hung up. The next morning, I opened my LinkedIn and drafted a post. Nothing emotional. Just, when you're told you don't belong in the room, make sure your name is on the deed. Over 300,000 views by lunch. Private messages from strangers who've been erased. Rewritten. Minimized. One read, you said what I've been trying to scream my whole life. A news station called asking if I'd go on air. I thanked them and declined. I didn't need the spotlight. I had the structure. It was a Saturday when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, Loretta. She stood in a beige coat, arms full, not with gifts but with a photo album I recognized and an envelope I didn't. I opened the door. She didn't smile, just nodded and stepped in. I won't stay long. She set the items on the kitchen island. Your father would have been proud of what you built, just not of how we handled it. I pulled 2 mugs and filled them with tea. She pushed the envelope toward me. It's from Karen. I opened it slowly. The letter was short. I never thought you'd actually follow through. That's on me. I guess I forgot you were always the one who paid attention while the rest of us performed. No warmth. No real ownership. I folded it in half, then in half again, and set it down without comment. This isn't closure, I said. It's a formality. We sat in tired silence. Finally, she looked up. Do you think there's any way back? I stirred my tea. Let the spoon clink. I'm not angry anymore. But that's different from trust. When she stood to leave, I walked her to the door. She paused in the hallway as if waiting for a hug that never came. I didn't shut the door immediately, but I didn't invite her back either. That night I sat at my desk and opened the draft post I'd never published. I erased the old lines and typed, family is who holds you accountable, not who holds you hostage. I hit publish. Messages poured in. I didn't answer any. I whispered to the quiet room. I didn't say it for them. I said it for me. Legacy was never about the name. It was about what you built when no one believed you could. The gallery was filled with polished wood and floor-to-ceiling windows. It was the official launch of the new Pinecrest initiative. Press was there. Investment reps lined the walls. A single chair sat at the front of the stage. On it, a simple black and white card, Henry Grant. I walked onto the stage without a speech. I was asked why there's only one named chair here today. That's easy. That was the only chair that ever deserved a name. Some nodded. A few looked puzzled. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. Later, After the crowd thinned, I stood by that chair in the quiet. The applause behind me was nice, but the silence in front of me felt right. The next morning, I finalized the sale of the old community clubhouse, the same one where Grandpa taught me how deals get done. Sold it for 1.5 times market rate. No announcements. No final tours. Proceeds wired into the new Henry Grant Scholars Program. Full scholarships for local kids learning financial literacy. The charter read, "Legacy isn't inherited. It's built." Karen tried the press. Of course. Said I dismantled tradition. Misused heritage. Her tone polished. Words careful. She didn't know I'd already submitted the public archive. Every document. Every audit memo. Every email. The camera footage. The spreadsheet of every dollar misappropriated under her watch. A legal columnist summed it up best 2 days later. In 15 years of corporate litigation, I've never seen a cleaner takedown without a single raised voice. I kept my head down and got back to work. Closed every account that bore the old name. Rerouted investments through a separate entity. Kept nothing but what I'd earned and what Grandpa left. In my new office, the walls stayed mostly bare except for one thing. A single photo of Grandpa and me by the lake. Legs dangling off the dock. Me holding my first budget pitch scribbled in crayon. No plaque. No caption. Just presence. That photo had never made it into the old community album. But now it lived on the wall that mattered. I leaned back in my chair looking at it. I built something they can't touch, I said to no one. And I did it with everything they tried to erase. They wanted distance. They got it. And the neighborhood finally breathed easy again. Grass still 2.5 inches. Flags still flying on the right days. But nobody measuring with a ruler anymore. Because sometimes the quietest resident ends up holding the loudest pen. And when that pen signs the checks, the Karen show is over.